Hello folks, welcome to my YouTube channel, Watercolor Impressions. This week we are diving into the world of painting cityscape and I have chosen Halifax downtown as my reference. Before you go, hit the subscribe button so you guys can get weekly video updates from my channel. And let's get started, guys. I also picked Halifax downtown as my reference because its distinct architecture and vibrant cityscape vibe make it interesting subjects to paint. I do paint a lot of Toronto cityscape painting because that's where I reside, and I was going up on East Coast this summer, traveling around, and I stumbled upon a lot of city in Canada, so I want to capture other cityscapes in Canada as well. So I don't usually talk about drawing that much when I'm doing a tutorial or a video to teach cityscape, but this time I'm going to talk more about the drawing because it is really necessary. I've been painting quite a while, and it is really important to have a really good roadmap of what we're going to paint. If you're going for hiking, if you don't know the route, and you're not going to reach the destination, and you're going to be lost several times on the hike. So it's the same kind of thing happens while we paint as well, and it doesn't have to be exactly what's out there, but you can capture the essence, the building, the windows, and the big major shapes, and the shapes. The shape is the most important thing while you're drawing. So capture the shape first, then add the really mediocre details and people and everything in it. And even though the reference looked a little bit complex, you can see there's thousands of things happening there. I simplified it, and I also changed my composition as well. And I put the bus a little bit off the left because it sits on the rule of thirds. And I also split the paper in such a way as 1:3 painting. You never split a painting as half and half, and that's a no-go for any composition, and it doesn't look really pleasing to the eyes. And you can see I'm also adding the figures, and in the reference you can see the figures are literally closer to the camera, so but I lowered them a little bit so that it kind of gives that perspective and take us into the painting. So this is kind of like a one-point perspective, and you can see I'm also adding the details on the foreground building. And there are some dark spots you can see in my drawing because that shows where the darker parts are, or where the windows are. If you squint your eyes and check the reference, you can literally see the darker spots. So now anything you paint, you start with the big shape or the lighter value first. So the lightest value are the islets you can see in the reference. The next one would be the sky. And you can see I also left some white paint for the light at the top, so I can use that as eyelet, so I don't have to put white paint on top of it. So I grabbed Cobalt Blue at the top and mixed the Cerulean Blue and blending it in. And when it comes to at the bottom, I'm using a little bit of green, and you can see there's two trees. I'm also making the bottom a little bit hazy because it kind of gives that illusion of atmosphere and mood and distance, and it also creates this depth as well. And if you see the reference, everything look super sharp, and in photos you can see that hazy look because the photos tend to capture everything really sharp. Whereas as a painter, that's a beautiful thing about us. So we could take a reference and we can create and express the painting as we want it. And even if sometimes if the painting is not overcast, I usually make it a rainy painting just to create that expressing in such a way that it looks really nice. Okay, I painted the road using a little bit of neutral tint and a little bit of cerulean blue in it, and you can also mix any kind of white in it, but you have to create that warmth in it as well. So now I'm going to start with the background. When starting with the background, there's also a lot of details in it, and let's simplify it. And I also rushed it to paint the background because I want to mix that background blending in with the trees as well. And you can see now it looks like really like one shape. And I'm also wearing the values a little bit lighter because I want to create depth, as I mentioned before. So now I'm going to grab the building from the background, I'm going to bring all the way to the foreground. So you have to think when you paint a cityscape as one single shape, not painting each individual buildings by itself. If you're doing that, you're going to be caught in a lot of details, and it does cause a lot of frustration, and it will be really hard to control everything. So because watercolor medium, it's a really it's known for its fluidity. What I mean by that is it's really hard to control until you paint shape by shape. If you want to do that, might as well paint in gouache or oil. But in watercolors, the really good thing about is looseness. You can just leave away and paint really freely, and that's why I picked watercolors, and that's how I express myself. And you can see the building I painted as a one shape, and I used a little bit of redness in it. So I used burnt amber and a little bit of red in it, and you can also use a little bit of yellow ochre in it. And if you see the reference, it looks darker. So this is our first wash. So we have to get the basic shapes from our painting, or the basic colors, the local color of the buildings and other things which exist in our reference. And there are a lot of temptation for new beginners that they have to capture the color as it is. The one thing that helped me to improve my work, or which gave me a lot of confidence to paint, is to not to worry about the colors and just put the colors as it impresses you. So that way what happens is you tend to paint freely and not think about anything else. And when you do the first wash, don't worry about the painting is going nowhere. The first wash is really important, as well as it's a crucial step. But once you have everything, we can slowly build it up. And it's kind of like a layering. You just layer the cake by baking the dough first, then you put the icing on the top, and it's the same process. So we are just creating a base now, and we will layer with a lot of ingredients and layer it at the top, and we will do the icing at the end. Those are the details, as per se. So the building which was in the background dried out quite a bit, so I'm glazing over again, and I'm also painting a little bit darker because that's a shadow. The light is coming from top or right, so this on the right hand side, everything going to be in the shadow, so it's going to be darker. And if you squint your eyes, you could see how dark is it. And as I said, you have to paint and think everything as shape. And the other thing I also trying to improve in my work is the brush work. And your brush work have to be really crisp and confident, and not to have really lot of loose edges in your painting. There are some areas with it, whereas in the foreground I'll tend to paint a little bit tighter. And you can also see I also put some colors for the banners, and there is also a Scotia bank and the midground. I also added that, and there is also the beer sign. I really like the beer sign, so I want to add it. I also added that as well, and that also kills some monotonous in the painting as well. Because I've also seen a lot of watercolor paintings. There is only few colors has been mixed, and I also nowadays trying to put as much as color in my work as well. So I'm using this white paint to get some of the window details, and you can see I also painted in one go on wet, and it also gives this blurry shadows. And if you go out and if you squint your eyes, especially in the shadows, everything looks blurry. So we can also create that impression in our painting as well. So now, since I have the painting settling down at the bottom, so might as well add the shadow as well at the bottom. So now I'm going to paint the bus, and I'm not familiar with the Halifax bus, so and you can see in the reference there's a guy exactly in front of the bus, and there's a car, and I also removed the car and I moved the guy towards the left. And I also looked for some reference of Halifax bus, And because I have the reference for the site, whereas in the front at the bottom I didn't have any reference, but I did look for some references, and I also put some details on it. So now when I'm painting the bus, so this is this would be the really good exercise for any beginners. Creating shapes and making it 3D should be our main goal. So if you're not showing the forms of what we are painting, then we are losing the painting. And in order to create forms, there is 3 things to happen. There should be a good lighting, and there should be midtones. So the midtones would be the one we painted on the left hand side of the bus, and the lighting which is on the top, so I left some white bits. And even in the front side, I also want to create that form as well. Now you can see in its simplest form, you can think the bus as a rectangle. So we have to show the rectangle with the lighting and shadows and with the midtones. And you can see without any fuss, we did paint this painted the bus as fast as we can. And I'm also adding the shadows because the painting settling in at the bottom, it also gives this beautiful colorful shadows at the bottom as well. So this is the third glaze over I do, because the midtones dried quite a bit. So I'm glazing over a little bit of a darker tone on top of it, just to create that depth in our the bus as well. And the bus is our focal point as well, and it's one of the important thing. So now let's jump on to the figures. For the figures, it's the same thing. There will be a lighting, a midtone, and a shadow. So for the figures, I try to keep it really simple. I don't try to fiddle with it. So I used yellow ochre and a little bit of cadmium red in it to get the warmth. And I'm adding the secondary details in our painting as well. And the secondary details would be the bus, the people, the car, cycles, telephone poles. And I also added the telephone pole on the right hand side, you could see. And I'm also keeping it to a minimal detail. I'm not trying to add a lot of details on the telephone pole. There is one street pole which is in the foreground. I'll be adding a lot of details. And you can see there's also shadow on top of the car. I'm adding that as well. And you can see in a matter of seconds, as soon as we started adding the shadows, the whole painting coming alive. So now I'm going to add that figure because I added the shadow. So I thought this would be the next step to add those figures, so I know like the contrast between the light and shadow. So what we are adding now is the first wash for the figure. And as we did for the first wash for the buildings, for the road, it's the exact same thing we're gonna do for the figure as well. And I also keep the figures at last, because whenever I do a drawing of a figure, sometimes it doesn't end up being same. It will be somewhere else. So I'm also keeping in mind that in a way that you can also use figures to hide certain spot in our painting. So if there's an area looked really empty, we can add a figure there just to have some little bit of detail, so it doesn't look plain and empty in a composition. And since I add the first wash, I want to make sure that I can also use a wet on wet technique. Before it dries out, I can mix it and do it accordingly. And there's also another thing I do when I'm adding figure is when I add a darker figure, I add a lighter figure next to them, just to create a contrast. Even though the focal point of this painting is the bus and capturing the old downtown, but figure also plays a really essential part, because a lot of people see day-to-day life of people walking by. And I also want to show how busy of Halifax downtown on a weekend on a summer day. So this shows the story and portrays our painting as well. So now let's focus on the foreground building. And the foreground building is also a really important part in a painting as well. And you can see I'm also trying to do crisp marks to get the window. But if I would have done this painting again, I would have made the foreground building even towards right. I also made that street light really strong in the foreground because I want to make sure that as soon as we add that, you could see the whole foreground came towards the front because the value is a little bit darker. And I also want to create this composition because this composition would be a cross or L composition, and you could literally see that painting. So I'll be adding a lot of details in the foreground than the background. And now I'm trying to layer and shape the road for the pavement, as well as which disconnects from the road and the pavement for people to walk through. And I'm also trying to keep this to minimal. I don't want to add a lot of details because you can add a lot of details there. Sometimes it is necessary to think everything as a whole. The one thing to do is to step away from the painting and look from a distance if it captures the essence of the reference. So once you know it's there, then you could add the final details after that. So now this is the last part, and I also keep the shadows at the end as well. I don't add the shadows right away. And you can see as soon as we add the shadows, the whole painting came alive, and there's a light started appearing in our painting. So now we captured the first wash and the second wash, the midtones and the shadows. Now this is where the icing on the cake happens. So we'll be adding all the tertiary details on the painting now. So as I said in the reference, I don't have an image of all the details in the foreground of the bus because it was hidden by the people who were standing in the front on the car. So I looked for some references, add some details. So now I'm going to add the eyelets. So I also add the eyelets. I didn't add that much, and this is one detail. You can see it looked really empty on the top right, and this also acts as a little bit of nice details. And sometimes I do this, that's where laziness kicks in, using a credit card to create a straight line. And I try to avoid it and learn how to paint straight lines, but it did help me to create that structure. And I also want to capture the details as accurate possible, and it also looks crisp because it connects the sky, and it also has a really nice background. I think we capture the essence of the reference as well. And I always tape my watercolor painting just to get the crisp edge on the borders, so we know like how it looks like. I think it rather came out nice. Now it's your turn. Take my reference by downloading from my website, or find your own reference and let's see what you can come up with. Thanks again for watching this cityscape painting tutorial. Please feel free to share your thoughts on the video in the comment section below. If you have any other topics related to watercolors that you like me to cover, please reach out to me at watercolorimpressions@gmail.com or leave a comment down below. Don't forget to give this video a thumbs up and subscribe to our channel for weekly uploads, and share with your fellow artists, friends and family. And good luck with your painting, folks.